And I was just heartbroken. I said, well, I'm really sorry, but I can't do that. I love what I do, and I'm very grateful that I've made it. I don't know how many people really get to live to see their dreams come true. But I just knew that that was not right.
Dolly Parton has faced every storm life could throw, but this time, the world is holding its breath for her. Her sister Freda's late-night message hit like thunder. "Pray for my sister. She hasn't been feeling her best." Within hours, fans around the globe were lighting candles, sharing prayers, and asking the same question: what's happening to the woman who gave us hope when we had none? For more than 60 years, Dolly's voice carried millions through heartbreak and healing. Now that same voice has fallen quiet. She's 79, still fighting, still smiling, but the sparkle behind her eyes tells a different story. Her Las Vegas shows postponed, her health uncertain, her family by her side. This isn't about fame anymore. It's about faith. The girl who once sang her way out of poverty is now learning how to rest. And maybe for the first time, how to let the world sing for her. But before we talk about this chapter, the hardest one yet, we have to go back. Because to understand the woman everyone's praying for, you have to know the little girl who fought her way out of the Smoky Mountains with nothing but a dream, a guitar, and a heart too big to quit. Dolly Parton wasn't born into comfort. She was born into survival. Her story didn't start with guitars or spotlights. It started in a one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains, where the cold could bite through wood, and a family of 12 huddled under one quilt just to make it through the night. Her parents, Robert Lee and Avi Lee Parton, worked harder than most people ever will, just to keep their children fed. They had no electricity, no running water, and no safety net. The doctor who delivered Dolly was paid in cornmeal. That's how real the struggle was. But out of that poverty came a kind of strength you can't fake. When you grow up with nothing, you learn fast that love, laughter, and faith are the only things that can keep you alive. Even as a little girl, Dolly stood out. While most kids played, she was singing, not to impress anyone, but because it made the hunger and the cold easier to forget. Her mother filled the house with hymns, and her father filled it with hard work. He couldn't read or write, but he could build anything with his hands. He showed her what sacrifice looked like. Her mother showed her what grace looked like. Together, they built something far greater than wealth, a home full of music. The kids sang together every night, their voices echoing through the thin cabin walls, the mountains outside carrying their songs farther than they could imagine. Then came the kind of heartbreak that leaves a mark forever. When Dolly was 9, her baby brother Larry died just days after being born. There was no money for a headstone, just a small patch of ground behind the house. Dolly didn't understand death, only that her mother's voice went quiet and her father's shoulders seemed heavier than ever. She later said she started singing to fill that silence, to make her family feel alive again. Every note she sang after that carried a trace of that loss. And then there was the coat. The moment that would define her in ways even she didn't see coming. Her mother had stitched together scraps of fabric to make her daughter a winter coat. To Dolly, it was beautiful, a patchwork of love. But when she wore it to school, the other kids laughed. They called her poor, mocked her for the colors, and sent her home in tears. She remembered that humiliation for life. But here's what makes Dolly different. She turned that pain into gold. Years later, she wrote Coat of Many Colors, a song that transformed a childhood wound into one of the most powerful messages of love and self-worth ever sung. That's the secret to Dolly's resilience. Every bruise became a melody, every insult became a lyric. Every moment that tried to break her ended up building her instead. By 10 years old, she already knew two truths most people never learn. Life doesn't hand out kindness easily, and faith will get you farther than money ever could. The mountains taught her how to endure, her parents taught her how to believe, and loss taught her how to feel. All she needed now was a way out, and she was ready to chase it with everything she had. By the time Dolly turned 13, she was already performing like someone twice her age. Her uncle Bill Owens saw it first, that spark that could light up any room, that voice that could silence a crowd before she even finished a verse. Together, they hit the road in an old car that coughed more than it drove, chasing radio towers and tiny studios across Tennessee. They slept on couches, ate sandwiches out of wax paper, and sang anywhere someone would listen. There was no fame, no money, just a dream that refused to die. Every time a door slammed in her face, she wrote another song. Every time someone said "to country," she smiled and sang louder. It wasn't ambition, it was instinct. Dolly wasn't trying to be famous, she was trying to be heard. When she graduated high school in 1964, there was no party, no celebration, just a sunrise, a cardboard suitcase, and $20 in her pocket. She told her family she was moving to Nashville, the city where songs turned into legends. Her mother cried, her father nodded, and Dolly climbed onto a Greyhound bus that would change her life forever. She stared out the window as the mountains faded, whispering to herself, "I'll make it, or I won't come back." That wasn't confidence. That was survival. She wasn't running from home. She was running toward destiny. But Nashville wasn't the dream she expected. The city of music could be cruel, especially to a teenage girl with a thick country accent and homemade clothes. She faced rejection after rejection. Producers told her she was too raw, too mountain, too everything. They wanted someone polished, someone who fit their mold. Dolly didn't. She wrote songs at night by candlelight when she couldn't pay the power bill, sang in bars for tips, and smiled through insults that would have broken most people. She landed her first record deal with Monument Records in 1965, but even that came with strings attached. The label tried to turn her into a pop singer. They dressed her up, gave her shallow lyrics, and told her to sound less country. Every session left her feeling smaller, like a stranger in her own skin. "I felt like I was wearing somebody else's life," she said years later. But Dolly was never the kind of woman to let someone else write her story. When those singles failed, most thought her career was over. Instead, she picked up a pen and wrote herself back into existence. With her uncle, she co-wrote "Put It Off Until Tomorrow," a song that another artist, Bill Phillips, turned into a #1 country hit. Suddenly, the same people who told her no wanted to know who she was. That song opened doors. In 1967, she released her debut album, Hello, I'm Dolly, and the title said it all. This wasn't the shy girl from Sevier County anymore. This was a woman introducing herself to the world on her own terms. Her songs were honest, sharp, and rooted in everything Nashville said she should hide. It didn't take long for people to notice. Her voice was pure, her writing fearless, and her image impossible to forget. That same year, Porter Wagoner came calling, offering her a spot on his television show. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. Millions would see her every week. But Dolly didn't just want to be seen. She wanted to be remembered. What she didn't know then was that saying yes to that show would give her fame beyond her wildest dreams and one of the hardest heartbreaks she'd ever face. When Dolly walked onto the Porter Wagoner show in 1967, she was stepping straight into the heart of America's living rooms. Porter Wagoner was already a star. Flashy suits, big hair, and a bigger ego. He wanted someone new to sing beside him. The first time he heard Dolly's voice, he knew she wasn't just another duet partner. She was lightning in a bottle. Together they were magic. His swagger, her sweetness, a mix so perfect that fans couldn't get enough. Every week, millions tuned in to see them sing, laugh, and tease each other like old friends. Their chemistry was so natural that people started to wonder if there was more to it. There wasn't, but there was something just as powerful, a creative bond that walked a tightrope between love and control. Porter was proud to have discovered her, maybe too proud. He saw her as his project, the protege who owed him everything. For a while, Dolly played along. She was grateful for the platform, grateful for the audience. But with every passing year, her own dreams grew louder. She wasn't meant to stand behind anyone. She had her own stories to tell, her own sound to chase. When she tried to step out with solo material, Porter bristled. He reminded her who gave her that stage, who made her famous. Their friendship started to crack under the weight of ambition. And for Dolly, that was a kind of heartbreak she'd never known. Losing someone who believed in her, just not enough to let her fly. The tension built quietly until it couldn't anymore. By 1973, she knew she had to go. But walking away wasn't simple. How do you leave the man who helped you become who you are? How do you thank someone who doesn't want to hear goodbye? Dolly did it the only way she knew how. She wrote it. The song was "I Will Always Love You," and it was more than a hit. It was a message, a confession, and a farewell all rolled into one. When she sang it to Porter, he cried. So did she. It was closure set to music, forgiveness wrapped in melody. And when the song hit the airwaves, it went straight to #1. But success didn't erase the ache. She had spent years fighting for her independence, and now she had it, but it came with silence. No more duet partner, no weekly TV show, no safety net. She was on her own. Nashville wasn't sure what to make of her. A woman that beautiful, that ambitious, and that outspoken. Some said she'd fade without Porter. Instead, she soared. In 1974, Jolene hit the world like a confession whispered through tears. It was raw, real, and haunting. A song about jealousy, heartbreak, and dignity. Everything women felt but rarely said out loud. Jolene and I Will Always Love You came from the same heartache, one written in fear of losing love, the other in the pain of letting go. Those two songs cemented who Dolly Parton really was. Not just a singer, but a storyteller of truth. She'd walked away from the man who made her famous, and somehow ended up even bigger than before. But fame doesn't always heal what it breaks. The years ahead would bring brighter lights, bigger crowds, and deeper wounds. Because the higher she climbed, the lonelier the view became. The moment Dolly stepped into the spotlight alone, she stopped being just a country singer. She became a force, but power always comes with a price. By the late 1970s, she was everywhere. Radio, television, movie screens, magazine. Her name glittering brighter than the rhinestones she wore. Her hit songs poured out one after another. Love Is Like a Butterfly, Here You Come Again, and Two Doors Down. To the world, she looked untouchable. The perfect mix of talent, humor, and charm. But behind the shine was exhaustion so deep, it nearly broke her. She was working non-stop, running on caffeine, determination, and pure fear of slowing down. She knew too well what it felt like to have nothing, and she swore she'd never go back. Her crossover into pop music was a gamble. Nashville traditionalists called her a sellout. They said she'd abandoned her roots, but Dolly didn't flinch. I wasn't leaving country, she said. I was taking it with me. And she did. Here You Come Again didn't just top the country charts. It stormed the pop charts too. For the first time, country music was cool outside the South, and Dolly Parton was leading the charge. But the endless grind of fame came with cracks. Each tour bled into the next. Each smile hid a little more pain. Her body began to falter under the weight of it all. Years of travel, heavy costumes, and pressure left her sleepless and aching. Still, she refused to rest. The show always had to go on, and for Dolly, that meant pushing through everything, even when her body said no. Then came 9 to 5. In 1980, she wrote the song on the movie set, tapping her long nails together to keep the beat. What started as a joke turned into an anthem. The film and the song exploded, giving voice to working women everywhere. It wasn't just catchy, it was revolutionary. People who had never even liked country music were suddenly humming along. Dolly had gone from a Tennessee girl to a global symbol of grit and grace. But success was a double-edged sword. The fame she worked so hard for was now devouring her. Her schedule became brutal. 12-hour shoots, interviews, studio sessions, and flights that blurred together. Her laughter still came easy, but behind it lived exhaustion, chronic pain, and loneliness. Then came the diagnosis that would change her forever: endometriosis. It wasn't just physical pain, it was emotional devastation. It threatened the very thing that kept her alive, her ability to perform. Doctors warned her to rest. She didn't. She couldn't. She pushed through until she collapsed, waking up in a hospital bed facing a truth she never wanted to hear. The surgery that saved her life also ended her dream of becoming a mother. For Dolly, who had always imagined a home full of children's laughter, it felt like the world went silent. The months that followed were some of her darkest. She withdrew, hiding behind closed doors, crying in silence because she didn't know how to live without creating. For the first time, her songs couldn't fix the pain. Her friends worried she was fading, and for a while she was. But then something remarkable happened. Out of that stillness, she began writing again, slower, deeper, with a kind of honesty only heartbreak can teach. The woman who once sang to survive poverty was now singing to survive her own sorrow. The sound was softer, but the strength was louder than ever. Dolly had turned pain into melody once again, reminding the world and herself that no matter how many times life breaks her, she'll always find her way back through a song. By the mid-1980s, Dolly had everything she'd ever dreamed of: fame, fortune, movies, awards, and yet she'd never felt emptier. The applause was loud, but the silence afterward was louder. She'd worked herself to the edge, ignoring every warning sign until her body finally gave out. Endometriosis had taken its toll, and after major surgery, she woke to a reality she'd never prepared for. The dream of motherhood, the one she carried quietly through every tour and award show, was gone forever. She didn't cry in front of anyone. She just went home, shut the door, and disappeared. For the first time, she couldn't find comfort in her music. The woman who had written songs to survive heartbreak couldn't write at all. Days blurred into nights. The stage lights that once felt like heaven now felt like interrogation lamps. Friends said she smiled through interviews like always, but the light behind the smile was fading. She later admitted that she spiraled so far down she didn't know if she'd ever come back. But then something small, something simple, pulled her out of the dark. It wasn't a new hit or a grand revelation. It was her little dog, Popeye. One night, when she couldn't bear the quiet anymore, he jumped onto her lap and looked at her like she still mattered. That tiny spark of unconditional love brought her back to life. "He saved me," she said later. But in truth, she saved herself. One slow, painful breath at a time. She started praying again, writing again, rebuilding, not for the charts, but for her soul. And from that healing came her greatest gift to the world, the Imagination Library. It began small, a tribute to her father who never learned to read, and a promise to help children find what she once found in songs: escape. She didn't announce it with cameras or press releases. She just started sending books to kids in her hometown. One child became 100. 100 became millions. Today, more than 200 million books have reached children across the globe because of her. "If I couldn't have my own children," she said softly, "I could help raise everyone's." That's Dolly. When life took away her dream, she built a new one for others. Still, even in her strength, the ache never fully left. There were quiet moments when she'd see a mother holding a baby in the crowd, and her eyes would flicker with something unspoken. But instead of letting that pain harden her, she turned it into grace. Every song, every laugh, every gift was her way of saying, "I'm still here, and I still have love to give." She learned that motherhood doesn't always mean cradling a child. Sometimes it means cradling the world. If Dolly's career was built on glitter, then her marriage to Carl Dean was built on quiet. He wasn't a star, he never chased cameras, and he didn't need her spotlight to feel proud of her. He was her calm when the world turned too loud. They met outside a laundromat in 1964 when she was 18 and he was 21. She was still wearing the same dress she'd arrived in from Tennessee, and he later joked that he fell for her before the rinse cycle was done. From that moment, Carl loved her not as Dolly Parton the singer, but as the barefoot girl with a laugh that could break through any silence. They married 2 years later, with her mother sewing her wedding dress by hand. It was small, private, and exactly what Dolly wanted. No record label, no reporters, just love. While the world saw her everywhere, Carl stayed home, running his paving business, mowing the yard, and reading the newspaper while she built an empire. He never tried to compete with her fame. He didn't have to. He gave her something no one else could. "I'm the one who flies," she used to say. "He's the one who keeps me grounded." They were opposites in every way. She thrived on chaos, he thrived on silence, and somehow that's what made it work. He never came to her shows, never craved the spotlight, and that's exactly how she liked it. To the world, she belonged to everyone, but to him, she was home. For nearly 6 decades, their love stayed sacred and unseen. When people asked how they lasted so long, she said, "We respect each other's space, and we make each other laugh." Behind that humor was something deeper, an unspoken understanding that fame fades, but love that's kept private lasts. And it did, right up until 2025, when that laughter finally went quiet. Carl Dean passed away peacefully at 82, in the same Nashville home where they'd built a lifetime of ordinary magic, shared breakfasts, quiet prayers, and front porch sunsets. There were no headlines at first, no cameras, just stillness. Dolly, the woman who had sung through every heartbreak, finally faced one too heavy for music. She planned the funeral herself, keeping it as private as their love had always been. In a small cedar chapel Carl had built for her years earlier, she placed his favorite wildflowers by the altar and photos of their life that no one had ever seen. When it was time to speak, she didn't read a eulogy, she sang. A song no one had ever heard before. A love letter in melody. By the final verse, her voice cracked, and she whispered, "You were always my home." Those who were there said not a single person left with dry eyes. In the weeks after, she barely left the house. She kept his boots by the door, his coffee cup by the sink, his newspaper on the table. Every morning she still brewed 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for him. When someone asked why, she smiled and said, "Habit. Hope." She talks to him still, in prayers and in the quiet moments when the light hits the porch just right. For a woman who built her life on sound, the silence he left behind became deafening. But Dolly knows love doesn't die. It just changes form. And though her voice has carried her through every storm, this time it's the memory of his that carries her. The years after Carl's passing brought a kind of quiet that Dolly had never known before. She'd survived poverty, illness, heartbreak, and the crushing pace of fame, but losing him was different. It wasn't just grief, it was disorientation. For decades, Carl had been her anchor, the still point in a life that never stopped spinning. Without him, even her music felt like it had lost its gravity. The laughter that once came so easily now caught in her throat. At 79, her days have slowed, but they're far from empty. She still wakes up before dawn, like she always has. She brews coffee, 2 cups out of habit, and watches the Tennessee light spill through the kitchen window. Some mornings, she swears she hears his voice in the hum of the percolator, his chuckle in the creak of the porch swing. She doesn't cry as much anymore. Instead, she talks to him. She tells him about the new songs she's writing, the letters she's gotten from fans, and the garden that's finally blooming the way he used to like it. It's her ritual, her way of keeping him close in a world that keeps trying to move on without him. Her health, though, has started to slow her down. The sparkle is still there, but it's softer now. Her sister Freda's late-night message, "Pray for my sister, she hasn't been feeling her best," wasn't just a passing worry. It was a cry from someone who knows how fragile she's become. Dolly had to postpone her Las Vegas residency and upcoming tours, choosing recovery over relentless work for the first time in her life. For a woman who spent 6 decades proving that nothing can stop her, the idea of resting feels almost unnatural. But this time she's listening. Doctors call it a period of recovery. She calls it a season of stillness. In that stillness, she writes. Her private studio in Nashville has become her sanctuary, a warm, golden space filled with guitars, candlelight, and photos of the people she's loved and lost. Floyd, her mama, Carl. All the souls who once gave her strength now watch her quietly from the walls. And when she sits down to write, the words come not from ambition, but from peace. Her songs now are softer, simpler melodies meant for healing, not for hits. "I'm not done yet," she says with a wink. "I've still got a few verses left in me." Even now, her faith burns as bright as ever. She tells friends she's not afraid of what comes next. "The Lord's got me," she says, smiling that same gentle smile that carried her through every storm. Fans still flood her social media with prayers and love, and she reads every one. "If you've ever prayed for me," she once said, "just know I've probably already prayed for you." Maybe that's why the world loves her the way it does, because even when she's the one in pain, she's still the one sending hope back out. For Dolly Parton, this isn't the end. It's just another verse in a song that never truly ends. A song about love that outlives loss, faith that outlasts fear, and music that keeps playing long after the lights go out. Even now, as the world holds its breath for her, Dolly Parton remains unshaken in spirit. The woman who once sang barefoot under the Tennessee stars has lived long enough to see her music carried into space, to watch generations grow up on her words and to outlast almost every era she ever helped define. But these days, her story isn't written in gold records or award shows. It's written in quiet moments, in the rustle of her porch swing, in the steady hum of prayer candles flickering beside her bed, the laughter of the children who open her imagination library books without knowing that the woman who sent them is reading their hearts right back. Fame fades, voices age, but kindness, the kind she's built her whole life on, doesn't die. It multiplies. In interviews, when asked about legacy, she smiles and says she doesn't think about it much. "I just try to leave the world a little better than I found it," she says. But the truth is, she already has. The little girl who once slept in a one-room cabin with no running water built schools, libraries, and hospitals for others. The woman who couldn't have children became a mother figure to millions. And the singer who turned pain into poetry has now turned her twilight years into a lesson in grace. Even as her body slows, her soul keeps moving. Soft, steady, unstoppable. "I'm not scared of dying," she once said. "I just don't want to leave any songs unsung." That's Dolly in a sentence. A woman who sees creation as faith, who believes that music can carry what words can't. Her sister Freda's plea for prayers reminded the world how fragile she is now, but it also reminded everyone just how deeply loved she remains. Fans across the globe lit candles, shared memories, and whispered prayers not out of pity, but gratitude. Because everyone, in some way, has a piece of Dolly inside them. Maybe it's the courage to dream, the warmth to forgive, or the strength to smile through pain. She gave that to us. Every lyric, every laugh, every flash of rhinestone was her way of saying, "You can shine even in the dark." As she recovers in Nashville, surrounded by family and faith, she doesn't seek attention. She doesn't ask for headlines. She just asks for peace, for quiet mornings, soft music, and the comfort of knowing she's done what she came here to do. And when she finally returns to the stage, even if only for one more song, it won't be for applause. It will be for love. For the people who prayed when she couldn't sing, for the fans who grew old with her music, for the world that never stopped believing in her. If this is Dolly's final act, it's not an ending. It's a benediction. Because her story was never about perfection. It was about persistence. From mountain dust to diamond lights, she proved that kindness can be louder than pain and that faith can outlast fame. And maybe, when her voice finally rests, the world will still hear her in every act of love, every note of compassion, every song sung to survive. So tonight, if you've ever found comfort in her words, whisper her name, light a candle, say a prayer. Because legends like Dolly Parton don't really leave us. They just keep singing from somewhere higher, somewhere softer, where the music never stops and love never runs out. If Dolly's story touched your heart today, please show your support by hitting that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear her story of resilience and faith. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another inspiring story. Drop a comment below telling us your favorite Dolly Parton memory or song. Let's keep her spirit alive together. Thank you for watching, and may her music continue to bless your life.